Welcome to today's deep dive. I am your host, and as always, I am joined by our resident literary expert to unpack some incredible cultural history.
Hey everyone, it is so great to be here. We have a really massive topic to get into today.
We really do. So, I want you to picture something with me. It is the year 2026.
Which is honestly wild to actually say out loud.
It really is. We are officially a quarter of the way through the 21st century.
We're basically living in the future we used to talk about.
Right. But if you stop and look back over your shoulder at the last 25 years or so, and I asked you to pick the absolute best books published since the year 2000, where would you even start?
Oh man, it's a paralyzing question. I mean, think about the sheer volume of content we've produced in the last 2.5 decades.
It's staggering.
Totally. You have the rise of the ebook, the self-publishing explosion, the audiobook boom. The noise floor of culture is just incredibly high right now.
Yeah, finding the signal in that noise is harder than it has ever been.
True.
And that is exactly why I was so excited to get my hands on our source material for this deep dive. Because we aren't just guessing here. We are looking at a definitive list of the top 15 books of the 21st century.
Right, compiled by the New York Times.
Exactly. And honestly, looking at this list, it feels less like a ranking and more like a map of where our heads have been for the last generation.
I think that's the right way to view it. And right off the bat, we need to clarify the mission here for everyone listening. This isn't a list of what sold the most copies at the airport newsstand.
Right. This isn't based on book talk trends.
No, or what had the biggest movie adaptation with the biggest stars.
So it's not a popularity contest.
Not in the commercial sense, no. This is about literary consensus. The source material explains that this list was derived from a massive survey of hundreds of novelists, critics, poets, and literary editors.
The heavy hitters.
Exactly. We are talking about the people who live and breathe sentences. They voted, and this list is the aggregate result.
Which gives it this incredible weight. It acts like a time capsule of what we, as a culture, decided was important. So today, we're going to unpack these 15 titles.
And it's quite a mix.
It really is. We have everything from the major titles you have definitely heard of to some experimental surprises that might be totally new to you, but I don't want to just list them off.
No, lists are boring. We need to figure out why these specific books made the cut. What does this list tell us about what we value in stories right now?
Let's get right into it then. The number one spot. The book that beat out literally everything else published since the turn of the millennium. It is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante, published in 2012.
It is a fascinating, almost aggressive choice for number one.
It really is. So it's the first volume of the Neapolitan Quartet. Now, on the surface, this is a story about two girls growing up in Naples. But looking at the critical notes here, it seems to be doing something much heavier than just a standard coming-of-age story.
Yeah, the critics describe it as a profound portrayal of friendship.
Profound portrayal, yeah.
That is the key phrase. It's looking at friendship, but specifically through the lens of social change and intimate personal history.
Right.
What Ferrante did, and why I think the critics put this at the very top, is that she managed to make a story that is hyper-local, set in the poverty and violence of a specific neighborhood in Naples, feel universally epic.
So it connects the small life to the big world.
Precisely, and it sets a tone for the whole list. The critics seem to really value books that are deeply, deeply personal, almost uncomfortably so,
Yeah.
but that use that personal story to paint a massive social backdrop. It is the intersection of the I and the we. You have these two girls, Lila and Linu, and their competition, their love, their jealousy. It mirrors the volatility of Italy itself during that era.
Wow. That idea of the we, of how we fit into the bigger picture, transitions perfectly into a major theme I noticed running through this source material.
Yeah.
And that's the need to reimagine the past.
Retrospective storytelling is huge in the 21st century. We are constantly trying to make sense of how we got here.
So let's talk about the number 2 book on the list, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. Now, this stands out immediately because it is nonfiction.
It is, but the source describes it as literary essential.
Right, and it covers the Great Migration, correct?
Yes, it tracks the migration of Black citizens from the American South to the North and West. But the reason it sits at number 2, right next to Ferrante's novel, is because Wilkerson writes history with the narrative force of a great novel.
She really focuses on individuals.
Exactly. It's an award-winning work that doesn't just list facts and dates. It tells the emotional truth of a massive demographic shift.
It feels like the line between fiction and nonfiction is getting blurrier on this list.
It definitely is. And that leads us right to Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel from 2009, This one actually won the Booker Prize.
Now, Wolf Hall is straight historical fiction, Henry VIII, the Tudors,
Yeah.
but we have had a million books about Henry VIII. Why is this one the masterpiece?
Because it is a masterclass in perspective, it reimagines the life of Thomas Cromwell.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we usually think of Cromwell as the villain in the Henry VIII saga. You know, the bureaucrat, the guy who orchestrated the downfalls of others to keep the king happy. But Mantle flicks the camera. She puts us directly inside his head.
So it's showing a preference in this list for books that take a new angle on established history.
I think so. It suggests that the literary consensus of the 21st century loves a revisionist take. We want to see the guy in the shadows, not just the king on the throne.
Right, we are a bit suspicious of the official narrative.
Exactly. So we reward books that complicate it. Mantell makes the bureaucratic brutalism of the Tudor court feel like a modern political thriller.
That theme of looking into the shadows, specifically regarding American history and slavery, comes up multiple times here. It feels like the literary world is really grappling with lineage.
They absolutely are.
There are three specific titles here that touch on slavery and heritage in very different ways. First, there's The Known World by Edward P. Jones.
Published in 2003, this is often cited as one of the finest contemporary novels, period.
Period, yeah.
What makes it stand out, and the source really highlights this, is its complex narrative structure. It explores slavery in the American South, but it deals with a very specific, uncomfortable reality, which is Black slaveholders.
That is a very heavy, complex topic.
It is. It blurs lines. It complicates the binary narrative in a way that feels incredibly modern and challenging. It refuses to be simple.
Wow.
Jones builds this entire universe, a fictional county in Virginia, and populates it with characters who are all trapped in this moral labyrinth. It is not just about the horror of the institution, but the complexity of the humans operating within it.
And then you contrast that gritty realism with something like The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, which came out a bit later in 2016.
Right. Whitehead does something very different there. He blends fiction and history, but he introduces a fantastical element. In his book, the railroad isn't just a metaphor.
It is a literal railroad with trains and conductors underground.
Exactly. It is a narrative about escape, but it uses genre elements, almost like magical realism, to get there.
It's fascinating how both are on the list. One uses complex realism, and the other bends reality to get at the truth.
It shows there is no one way to write about trauma. Whitehead essentially treats the American landscape like a series of alternative realities. Each state the protagonist visits represents a different possibility of American history.
And to cap off this heritage theme, we have Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee from 2017. I loved seeing this on the list.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's described as a multi-generational saga, which is a genre that never really goes out of style.
But this isn't American history.
No, and that is so important to note. It fits this theme perfectly, but weaves together history, immigration, and identity regarding a Korean family in Japan.
So the canon is expanding.
Totally expanding. It shows that this 21st century list isn't just about American or British history, it is global. It's about how history presses down on families across generations no matter where they are. The title itself, Pachinko, refers to a game of chance, which is just such a potent metaphor for the immigrant experience.
That idea of the family, that's a perfect segue, actually. Because while a lot of these books are about big historical movements, migrations, wars, slavery, there is another massive chunk of the list that just zooms all the way in.
The interior life.
Exactly. The living room drama, the domestic sphere, it's just as powerful, but the stakes are internal. We have to start with The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen. This was 2001, right at the start of our century.
A profound family satire. That is the key classification here.
The notes say it sparked major cultural and critical discussion. I remember when this came out, it felt like the book everyone had to have an opinion on.
It really did. The Corrections was seen as this massive attempt to write the great American novel for the new millennium. It captures the anxiety, the dysfunction, and the absurdity of modern family life.
Yeah.
It's big, it's loud, and it's very satirical. It is trying to encompass the whole American experience through one messed up family, the Lamberts, gathering for one last Christmas.
But then look at the contrast with Gilead by Marilyn Robinson.
Total opposite in terms of tone.
Right. Gilead is just a letter.
Right.
From an aging pastor to his young son.
Yes. The source describes it as contemplative and deeply human, Where Franzen is satirical and loud and cynical, Robinson is quiet and spiritual.
It's more of a medication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that Gilead is so high on this list tells me that the critics value that quiet introspection just as much as the big social commentary. It is a book about grace. It slows you down.
And if we are talking about introspection and feelings, we have to talk about The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion.
Yes, the only memoir on our specific highlight list today.
It's about grief.
Emotional clarity and honesty. That is what the source emphasizes. Didion wrote this after the sudden death of her husband.
Right.
It's a study of what happens to the mind when it's in shock. It isn't just sad, it's highly analytical. It is widely studied because it puts words to an experience, grief, that is usually completely indescribable.
And the title refers to that feeling.
Right. The magical thinking is that irrational belief that if she just does everything right, she can reverse the loss.
It's heavy stuff. But looking at the list, it seems like tragedy is a recurring flavor. I mean, look at The Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz.
A Pulitzer Prize winner.
This one sounds like such a mix. The source says it blends pop culture, Dominican history, and family tragedy.
And that blend is what makes it a defining 21st century book. It is not just a sad story. It's filtered through nerd culture, sci-fi references, and the specific history of the Dominican Republic under a dictatorship.
So it's genre bending.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It reflects how we actually consume the world now. We process tragedy through the lens of the media we consume. You have this protagonist who just wants to write fantasy novels, but he's stuck in a multi-generational curse.
Wow. And speaking of genre bending, we have to talk about the future. Because not all of these books are looking back at the past or analyzing the family living room. Some are looking forward, and honestly, it is not looking great.
Yeah, the outlook is pretty bleak if you trust the novelists.
We've got The Road by Cormac McCarthy, 2006.
One of the most influential works of 2000s fiction, period. Another Pulitzer winner.
It's described as lyrical and post-apocalyptic. But lyrical feels like such a fancy word for a book that is so brutal.
It is brutal. It's a father and son walking through a dead, ash-covered world. But the word lyrical is really important there.
Why is that?
Because McCarthy uses this beautiful, elevated, almost biblical language to describe absolute horror. It creates this tension that critics obviously responded to. It elevates the end of the world into something mythic. It strips everything away until all that is left is parental love.
That's powerful. And then there's Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro.
A dystopian coming-of-age novel.
But it's not like The Hunger Games. It's not an action movie at all.
No, not at all. It's a meditation on humanity and ethics. It is about clones raised for organ donation, but the book isn't about the science or the rebellion.
It's about the people.
It's about their souls. It asks what makes us human. It is very subtle for a sci-fi premise. It uses the future to ask a question about the present. The tragedy isn't that they run away, it's that they mostly accept their fate.
So we've got history, we've got family drama, we've got the apocalypse. But then there are the books on this list that are hard to classify. The ones that mess with the very structure of storytelling. The experimental ones.
The heavyweights of form. These are the books that argue that the old way of telling a story just doesn't work anymore.
Let's talk about 2666 by Roberto Bolaño.
This book is legendary. The source calls it monumental and enigmatic.
Monumental feels right. It is huge.
It was published posthumously in 2008, and it is frequently cited as one of the most important novels of modern literature because it absolutely refuses to behave.
How so?
It's 5 parts, loosely connected, dealing with murders in a Mexican border town, a reclusive author. It is a labyrinth. It challenges the reader to find the meaning. It is not going to hand it to you. It creates an atmosphere of dread that pervades the whole 900 pages.
900 pages, wow. And then there's Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald.
A hybrid novel of memory and history.
What does hybrid mean in this specific context?
Sebald mixes fiction with essayistic ramblings and even photographs. The text is literally broken up by grainy black and white photos. It's about a man tracing his history back to the Holocaust. But the prose is distinctive.
Distinctive how?
Long, winding sentences that feel like memory itself. It's not just telling a story. It is replicating the feeling of remembering. It's disorienting, intentionally so. It demands that you pay attention to the silence between the words.
And finally, a more recent one that really divides people. Outlined by Rachel Cusk from 2015.
This is an innovative narrative experiment.
Innovative in what way?
Well, think about a standard novel. You have a main character, and they want something right.
Right.
In Outline, the narrator is almost invisible. She goes to Athens to teach a writing course, and the book is mostly just conversations she has with other people. You learn about her by how she reflects others.
Oh, that is fascinating.
It explores identity and voice by almost removing the main character's voice.
Yeah.
It is very modern, very cool, and very detached. It's like the negative space of a novel.
Okay, so we have unpacked the titles. We've gone from the streets of Naples and My Brilliant Friend to the post-apocalyptic ash of the road and the experimental prose of Outline. But I want to zoom out for a second.
Let's look at the big picture.
Why these 15? You mentioned earlier that this list is reliable, but what makes it the gold standard? Why should you, the listener, care about this list over, say, the Amazon bestsellers list?
Based on the analysis of the methodology from the source, there are 5 key pillars that make this list trustworthy. First and foremost, expert-based selection.
Meaning definitely no bots voting.
Right, yeah, definitely no bots, and no sales figures factored in either. This is based on votes from established novelists, critics, poets, and editors. These are the peers of the authors. It is an evaluation of craft, not commerce. It's about what writers think is good writing.
Right. And secondly,
The reputation of the source. It comes from the New York Times. Like them or not, they are one of the most influential literary institutions in the English-speaking world. Their stamp of approval really carries weight.
that makes perfect sense. It essentially creates a canon.
Third is broad literary consensus. These aren't obscure picks that only one rogue critic liked. These books appear on multiple lists. They have stood the test of time, and critical acclaim has been consistent over the years. They didn't just flash in the pan and disappear.
And I noticed a lot of award winners in there, too.
That is the fourth point. Major literary awards. We mentioned the Pulitzer Prize for The Road and Oscar Wilde. We mentioned the Booker for Wolf Hall. These awards act as a seal of quality that reinforces the consensus.
And finally, the fifth pillar.
Diversity. And I don't just mean demographics, though that is absolutely there. I mean diversity of genre and voice. The list balances fiction and nonfiction. It has the grand historical saga like Pachinko, alongside the intimate memoir like The Year of Magical Thinking.
It really covers a lot of ground.
It includes authors from different cultural and geographic backgrounds. It's not just 15 books by guys from Brooklyn. It reflects a broad view of the world.
So what does this all mean for us? If you look at this collection as a whole, what is the ultimate takeaway?
I think it proves something really encouraging. It proves that the 21st century has been a golden age for a very specific kind of book. The book that blends the personal with the political and the experimental with the readable.
It's not one or the other. You don't have to choose.
Exactly. You don't have to choose between a good story and high art. The Underground Railroad is a page-turner about escape, but it's also high art. My Brilliant Friend is a soap opera of friendship, but it is also a deep sociological study.
The consensus seems to be that the best books are the ones that do both.
They entertain you, but they also force you to look at the world differently.
That is a great takeaway. It's like we want to be entertained, but we also want to be challenged. We want the vegetables and the dessert.
Precisely. But here is a provocative thought to leave you with.
Oh, hit me.
We established that this list is defined by expert consensus rather than popularity. We ignored the bestsellers list to get here.
Right, we ignored the vampire romances and the airport thrillers.
So it raises the question, are there future classics currently sitting on the bestseller lists right now? Books that the critics are totally ignoring because they seem too pop, too commercial, or too silly that will actually be the ones we remember in 50 years.
Oh, that is haunting.
Think about it. The Great Gatsby wasn't a huge hit when it came out. Moby Dick was a total disaster initially.
So the next Moby Dick might be sitting on a shelf right now, totally ignored by the critics we just spent 15 minutes praising.
It has happened before. It could absolutely happen again. The critics are smart, but they aren't clairvoyant.
Well, on that existential note, I have some reading to do. I have only read about half of this list, and I feel like I need to catch up.
They're all worth your time, even the really difficult ones.
I hope you found something new to add to your stack today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the literary canon of the 21st century. Pick up one of these 15 books before we meet again. You really won't regret it.
Happy reading, everyone.
See you next time.
Subscribe to the Timeless Tales podcast. Your stories, your time.